So the Aqua Velva was, this is not an Aqua Velva, but it was a drink in the Zodiac by David Fincher by Robert Gray Smith. I double check on the name. Jake Gyllenhaal played him with Robert Downey Jr., who played the journalist, and Robert Gray Smith was a cartoonist that wrote the book about the Zodiac. Nothing like Sprite. Robert Gray Smith wrote the book Zodiac Unmasked. He was the one played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and he drank the Aqua Velva, which is basically gin, vodka. So it's gin and vodka. It's also, hey, can I ask you a question? It's also going to be Sprite or lemon lime juice. Do y'all have a blue juice that has a weird name? You can use it for different drinks. Carousel? Carousel. Yeah. Carousel, thank you. I just wanted to make sure. It's Carousel. It's an island, Portugal province. So it's blue. And it's Aqua Velva. It is vodka, gin, Sprite or lemon lime, and Carousel. That's how you say it. Carousel, like the hog. Zodiac Killer. He wrote Zodiac Unmasked. It was Robert Gray Smith that Jake Gyllenhaal played next to Robert Downey Jr. in that movie. And the book was written in 1986 by Robert Gray Smith called Zodiac Unmasked. Then they turned that into a movie directed by David Fincher with those two. It's pretty good. Sprite is one of the ingredients in the Aqua Velva. You just add a little bit of blue Carousel. You add a little bit of vodka and gin, and a little bit of Sprite. There you are. You're right there. Robert Gray Smith was a cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle. He worked on the case of the Zodiac Killer for 13 years. I believe he wrote Zodiac Unmasked, and he did drink Aqua Velvas, to my knowledge. That could have been added by David Fincher, I don't know. But the Carousel is in it, and the gin and the vodka and the Sprite. Okay. We're going to do some research on Paul Avery, who shared some of that same drink known as the Aqua Velva drink. All right, it's a drink that a bartender probably didn't know about. It is, like I said, vodka and gin, and then you add the lemon and lime, or Sprite. Then you add the Carousel. I don't know, they drank a whole bunch of them together in the scene. I don't know if that really happened. Paul Avery went crazy trying to solve the case. He never found the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer would arrive. He would announce that he was the Zodiac, usually at couples. He wore a big mask, and he usually shot the victims. He also stabbed them, and he tied them, so he was tie and bind. The first victims were in their car, and he used several different types of handguns. I don't really know if he used the same handgun over and over again. They did have one guy that they suspected, but they think it was a lost lead. It's ambiguous whether it was the right guy or not. But, well, you know, the story is never solved, so the case is unknown. No one knows who the Zodiac Killer is. But it went on in the 60s. Robert Gray Smith gave up his marriage. He was married to Krakauer Womack. He married a lady named Womack from 1963 to 73. I believe she was a nurse. That marriage ended, and then he remarried a woman named Krakauer. That marriage lasted for 5 years, I believe from 75 to 1980. And all he did was write books. He wrote high-profile serial killer books and true crime, mostly on the Zodiac, but he also wrote about, I believe he wrote the book that inspired Autofocus, which is with Greg Kinnear and Willem Dafoe. That's an intense story. So he wrote some story about that led to that screenplay, that led to that movie. He wrote many true crime books, so he focused on that for, I think he wrote 5 successful ones. The last one in 2021 was about the shooting Zodiac, as in probably about the film. So Robert Graysmith was around a lot. They spell his name Robert Graysmith as in one word, but in the Wikipedia, it's Robert Gray, as in Gray, skip a space, Smith. Very, very strange. Gyoza. In most cases, the alcoholic wants soda. It's a true story. People don't realize it. They want a sweet taste. They're an alcoholic because of the taste. They like the way it tastes. And they're secretly wanting soda, as in soda pop. They just don't know it. So, we got your gyoza. And we have your, ramen. And we're going to be there at 4.8 miles, 15 minutes. We'll arrive at 9:21 in the PM, as in post-meridium. I always say post-meridium because it's funny. Like yum. Ooh, food, yum. Or you can just say post-meridium. A lot of people don't know it ends with an M, but look it up, it does. Post-meridium ends with an M, as in Mary. Post-meridium. Look it up. It's post-meridium. If you're an English major. It took place in the late 60s. Okay? The Zodiac killer, which is unknown today because no one has been punished for the crime. No one has suffered the punishment for the murders that went on. And we'll talk about Vallejo and all of that stuff way later. We're only getting very specific about...
Approaching a railroad crossing.
3 things that the Zodiac killer did. He did 3 things. He mailed letters to the San Francisco Chronicle. He gave them blood-stained clothing. He created a cipher that you needed a decoder to solve. That's what he did. To prove, for one thing, that he was the Zodiac killer. Okay? Those are the 3 things. First, a letter to the Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, late 60s is when he mailed it, with blood-stained clothing to prove he was the killer. He cut some of their clothing off. And then the third, a cipher, because he did not want to be direct, but it was a letter that was solved by a married couple, I believe in the California area. I think it was California. I have to find out who solved it. It was people that got a hold of the San Francisco Chronicle, and they were able to read about the killings. And they were able to get a hold of the cipher and decode it. And they were an educated married couple. A man and woman solved it. And it started with, I am the Zodiac. And it talked about the killings and stuff like that. And when he would strike again, and he hinted, he used. Now, there were a few, here's the weird thing about the Zodiac that people don't understand. There were a few ciphers that he sent to the San Francisco Chronicles that meant nothing at all. It was complete chaos. It was only there for whatever reason, and they don't know if those ciphers were from the Zodiac. If the Zodiac ciphers were a real part of the letter, part of the story of the murders, then that was probably connected to one killer, the serial killer, that they don't have a name for. But there were a few of the ciphers that were never discovered. Well, they were discovered. They apprehended the ciphers, meaning they came into the mail and they were able to put them into the evidence room, the evidence locker. They were able to they still have them today. Those few did not make any sense. There was chaos. There was no way to solve it at all. It didn't make any sense. Because when a decoder is set forth, it will break the code for the other letters. Well, other ciphers. The letters were clear, but I think he did misspell, just like many killers do misspell. Or many writers misspell, but I'm sure Tennessee Williams misspelled a few words here and there once in a while. But regardless, the Zodiac killer sent a few ciphers that didn't mean anything at all. They couldn't be decoded. They tried to decode them, but they failed at decoding these ciphers. They weren't able to. It was a mystery. A few of the decoders worked. So one couple, which was a married couple, created a decoder, and that was able to solve the cipher. So they took these symbols, and some were actually a Zodiac symbol, which is a circle and an X that looks kind of like a cross, but it's more like an X, and it has a circle around it, which is the sign for the Zodiac. The other symbols represented letters. So when you decoded this symbol, whatever it may be, a Greek symbol or an alpha symbol or whatever he used, it was decoded and it was turned into a letter. And then each letter made up a word, and each word made up a sentence, and thus a paragraph or a statement about why he was killing or what he was after, but he wanted it to be very confusing. He stated that he would kill again if his ciphers were not published. Thus, the Zodiac was a published writer. He was published in the San Francisco Chronicle to be read by the public. That was evident in the process of what he wanted to do. That's what he had to do to be a published columnist, as he called him, a person that has their own column in the San Francisco Chronicle. He had that kind of power. Now, there was a talk show. I guess it was a late night talk show or something like that. And a guy called in that claimed to be the Zodiac. And when they were doing the talk show and talking about the Zodiac with a psychiatrist, or maybe it was a psychologist, probably a psychologist, all of a sudden the phone rang in the middle of the show. I don't know if it was a radio show. I think it was a radio show. It could have been a television show. Maybe both. But the phone rang, and this guy picked up the phone, and I'll find out his name later. And he's like, "Hello, welcome to our show." And the guy goes, "I am the Zodiac." And from there, they began to talk to him and kind of, use psychology on him to try to calm him down. And I think he started acting kind of weird, and they think that may have been him, but they don't know for sure. They were not able to successfully trace the call and catch him. Now, it probably was from a payphone or something of that nature, meaning something of that area, like a payphone or a phone from a business or something like that. I don't know for sure if it was a payphone, but he did call in to the radio show, or I think it was a television show. It was a television show. And he called in, and he wanted to establish to the public that he was the Zodiac killer. So it was an interesting case, because he wanted to be famous, or at least known, as he was doing his killing. That's why a lot of people think that those were actually fake, that it was someone else that was trying to take credit for the Zodiac killer, right? They were trying to take credit for it for some reason. I don't know why. It's a case that's still open, and it's an interesting case. So Linda and I, and the Linda and Cole Band at the time, and the Linda and Cole Band at the time, we created a song called The Zodiac, which is based upon the published information on Wikipedia. So that's part of the lyrics. I said that time. The lyrics. Okay. There is a person out there that is trying to harm me. I'm not going to mention their name, but there is a person out there that is trying to harm me, that's trying to hurt me. A lot of people get hurt by crazy people. It happens all the time. Lately, it's been random. Serial killers are still out there, but they're a dime a dozen. And they were real popular in the 60s and 70s. and somewhat in the 80s, a little bit in the 80s. And then we had some problems in the 90s. After September 11th of 2001, the serial killers have slowed down, but the mass shootings have increased, which are scary. Have you ever been to a place, someone walks in with like black clothing or whatever, and it gets kind of creepy? So there are the killers out there, but they don't call the mass killers serial killers. A serial killer is one that kills and then kills somewhere else, and then kills again, and then kills again, and kills again, and kills again. A mass shooter shows up in a crowd and kills a whole bunch of people all at once. That's what makes them a mass shooter. They're not necessarily a serial killer. What a serial killer is a killer that kills more than once. It's got to be more than once, and it's to different people and areas and stuff like that. It could be all 50 states or one state or a certain area, but it's serial. So if you look up the word serial, you'll be able to figure out what serial killer means. And it's very popular to talk about them because they get attention. Paul Avery and Robert Graysmith. Those are the two. Okay, now we have to investigate where this is. Yeah, probably this one. Nowadays, the serial killers are old-fashioned. They're not really around anymore. The guy that killed all those people up northwest, coming out of like the that area, Idaho area, all around there, and he tried to travel across the country, and he was stopped by a cop, a state trooper, or something like that, and he was with his dad, and he was also a heroin addict supposedly, but he was also a lawyer, or he was trying to be a lawyer. He was studying law, and he killed those four at the university. He was caught because of one of these devices. They were able to take a photo of his car, and they had the make and model of the car, and they were able to catch him really quick. The serial killers nowadays get caught very quick because of cameras. Look at this guy. So they get caught really quick. Now, mass shootings, that we can't stop. We're not going to be able to stop mass shootings. But the serial killers will get stopped pretty quick, unless it's a traveling hobo killer. Yep. A traveling hobo killer might be able to get away with it because they can jump trains and go town to town and kill. They might be able to do it. And as long as they're able to jump that train, they could stop off in certain towns.
Approaching a railroad crossing.
They could stop off in certain towns and kill. There was a traveling hobo killer. He came out of Mexico and he jumped trains and he was killing. I think this would happen about the time when Summer of Sam came out with Spike Lee. Spike Lee released a film that was based on the Son of Sam. Yes, Son of Sam. And it was based on the Son of Sam. And Elliott Smith wrote a song called The Son of Sam. And the movie that Spike Lee directed was called The Summer of Sam. And it came out in the summer. Victoria and I saw it. It's pretty scary. It was very scary. Got to spin around to get this. But like I said, serial killers are a dime a dozen. It's probably not going to happen anymore. They can get caught too quickly. What's going to happen is what's known as mass shootings. Those will not be stopped as long as we allow the public to have a gun. It doesn't matter if it's going to be, it doesn't matter the type of gun. Because the Virginia Tech killing was done with a 22 and a 9mm. Those are easy to get a hold of, and he killed more than like almost all of them. There's a Virginia Tech guy. It was an Asian guy that was into Moby Dick. He went into a class, and he was also into writing plays and stuff. Violent plays. He wrote these very violent plays. But he just went in and killed everybody with a 22. And those are dangerous. Those are one of the most dangerous guns, a 22 is. It bounces around in the body. It'll go in your shoulder and come out your foot. 22s are horrible. As long as we have handguns, then we're going to have mass shootings like crazy. And that's probably going to be the problem, that we're going to face. The serial killer is, like I said, very, very much a dime a dozen. We don't really come across them very often at all. That guy that killed everyone in that university, the four that died, and they're still talking about it, that guy they apprehended very quickly. That wasn't much time went by. Ted Bundy was in and out of prison several times and killed, they sometimes say, hundreds of women. They don't even know how many he killed. Ed Gaines killed, I mean, there were so many serial killers, but nowadays they usually get caught very, very quickly because of these devices right here. They get caught because these devices are all over the place. Like this gas station has cameras all over the place. These neighborhoods have cameras. They have Nest that can identify. The person would have to be a flippin' mad genius. Look at that. A mad genius to get away with like what these other guys got away during the boomer generation, during the Vietnam era. There were serial killers. Those guys got away with it for like 10 years and stuff. They were doing their killing because we didn't have cameras. There weren't cameras everywhere. Very rarely were there any camera, any kind of video of Ted Bundy or anything, or any kind of video of the Zodiac. There was no video of the son of Sam Rorschewitz, that guy. There was no video of him at all. They didn't know who he was until he finally was apprehended. And he got apprehended because of a traffic ticket that was issued near where he parked his car to do the killings. They were able to put two and two together and get him that way. But they would have never got him without that traffic ticket. They were like coincidence kind of cases on how they caught him. In real weird ways that you would never even believe. It wasn't from cameras. But the last serial killer that was, out there, which was in I think the Northeast. Yeah. Waze is it's very difficult to deal with.
Approaching a railroad crossing.
Very difficult. It's like a radio show with Waze. I don't know which way they're going. These people are they just want their Taco Bell. Yeah, they want Taco Bell like intensely over here. I gotta figure this out real quick. All right, I figured it out. This is correct. I have to go in. This is the Nick Pascal hangout. Pascal High School's on the other side. That's where Taylor Sheridan went to school, and he wrote Hell or High Water, and also wrote Sicario. He works with Kevin Costner on Yellowstone. He's a brilliant writer. He's a screenwriter. He was also an actor, like a soap opera actor and stuff. He went out to Hollywood, did pretty good. He's got funny ears, but he's a great writer. He's a pretty good looking guy too. He's kind of buff. He's got a ranch called the 6666 Ranch, the 46 Ranch, or something like that. True story though. We're gonna get some burritos and drop them off at your doorstep. 2 Mexicans, nacho, Bel Grande, it's 6 crunchy tacos, and bean burritos. It's Mexican pizzas, or the 2 Mexican pizzas. Wonder what do they steal the enchilada? Right, well, we got their 2 Mexican pizzas, their 6 crunchy tacos, and the bean burrito thingy. And we're gonna drop that at their doorstep. And we'll get the exact mileage, the duration, and the time of the drop-off in just one moment. So sit back and relax. And also, if you got time, check out David Fincher's Zodiac. It's a really good movie. It's pretty interesting. It's about Paul Avery and a guy named Robert Gray Smith, played by Jake Gyllenhaal and Robert Downey Jr. And I've been on set with Jake Gyllenhaal in the movie called Moonlight Mile with Dustin Hoffman. He's a pretty cool guy. Back whenever he was younger. It was when Jake Gyllenhaal was starting off his career before the Zodiac too, and before the other stuff. He did a lot of stuff. I thought he was Tobey Maguire. Sorry about that, Jake.
On I-10 West, you are on the fastest route.
Yeah, I know.
You will arrive at 6:48 p.m.
Whenever you see the show and you see that means I'm going to Los Angeles. It's 20 hours away from my location here in Fort Worth. It'll take 20 hours to get there. I could do it in 2 days with no problem. 10-hour shifts. Stay in like a Motel 6 and I'll be there. At least I'd be there. I'd be doing Los Angeles vlogs. But we're not going to do that right now. Not at the present moment. We're going to wait for the right time and the We're going to wait for the right time and the right weight. All right. So we're going to show you where Taco Bell is. And then we're going to talk about the duration and the mileage. There is Taco Bell. You can see, well, there is Taco Bell. And there is the duration. 2.9 miles. We'll be there 9 minutes. We'll arrive at 10:07 in the PM, as in post-meridium. Taco Bell. Coming to your doorstep. So the story starts here. 2023. I had to make a big circle. There's a reason for that. And we're going to get into that throughout all of my career as an actor. And hopefully a director and writer as well. But it all started when it comes to career. At this place right here. There it is. There it is. All sonar. R.L. Haskell High School. That's where it all began. And there was a subway right over here. Nope, it's right there. That's where the subway was. That's where we would go eat. And then right over there was a Taco Bell, which they've moved. That was a Taco Bell. And the Whataburger's still there. And here is the school where 2 different people that affected my life. John David Templin, the theater teacher. He taught dramatic arts or drama. And Bob Reed, the creative arts creative writer. He was a creative writer, teacher. How do you call that anyway? Creative writing. He was a creative writing teacher. I guess in a way you could probably argue that's an artist, but it's a creative writer. So it's in the art field, but they write. He's a writer. He had his own book at the time called Red Bird Blackbird, to my knowledge. It was Red Bird Blackbird. I was trying to write a novel when I was there. He got mad at me and kind of yelled at me. But I was trying to write a novel about my sister. And It was called, you know what, that one's going to be a tough one to remember. But the one I did write, a little short story I wrote that they liked, was called The Sickness Will Not End in Death, which was kind of like a take on Misery. If you ever read Stephen King's Misery, it was kind of like that. But it was set in Fort Worth. And it was about this guy who was married. He wrecks his car right outside of downtown Fort Worth. And there's a lady that's a crazy lady that lives in a church. Very similar to the Hunchback of Notre Dame. She's this crazy lady that lives in a church. The wreck is bad. She goes to the car, pulls him out of the car. His wife is dead. She drags him into the church, upstairs into the bell tower, and watches over him. And these weird interactions happen between them. The whole class loved it, and I read it to them. They wanted to put it in the vignette, but instead they put my poetry, and they put my poetry, just my poetry. But I said, well, they said it's 20 pages long. It was more, probably 20 or 21 pages. I don't really remember how long it was. It was single spaced too. It was a pretty long one. And so we like it. We voted it in, and so it's voted in. But Bob's going to have to see if he can work it in there. Now, if Bob reworked that vignette, he could have it at the end of the vignette, and you could read it. But the name of it, since it wasn't published, there is a name to the story. And it was called The Sickness Will Not End in Death. That was the name. I remember now. That was the name of the story. I was thinking, what was the name of that story? My first one that I wrote, because we had we had assignments. And the first one I wrote was called A True Engineer, which is about me walking to school, about me walking to high school. I might still have a copy of The True Engineer. I do have a copy of the play. We had to write a play, and mine was called A Walk Through the Park, and I misspelled through THRU because a lot of people do, but I really didn't know that was the problem. I misspelled it it was THREW instead of THRU. I don't know. I really did that. And so one of the editors, the person that was acting on the editing team, goes, "Oh, Cole, I want to remind you something. You spelt through THREW, like when you throw something, the past tense of throw." And I went, "Oh, okay. Sorry about that." And I'm like, "Well, what were you trying to?" I was like, "I was probably trying to say THRU, a walk through the park." But it was supposed to be a walk in the park. I was kind of a foreigner in a strange land. I talk like a foreigner. It's a walk in the park. You ever see 2010? I think it was 2010. It was a sequel to 2001, which is Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece. In 2010, there's a Russian character in there that has a problem with the English language and making these assumptions on things like it's a piece of cake. He'd say it's a piece of pie. They're like, it's called a piece of cake. He would do those kinds of things. I did that all the time, and I'm originally from America, so I'd say it's a piece of pie, but it's a piece of cake. I did that all the time. So it was a walk in the park, not a walk through the park. So I don't know. I was young and I didn't understand a walk in the park. But that's how they say it. It's so important. It's colloquial speech. It's basically phrases that people have made up over the time. A lot of writers are very good with that. They'll go, "No, it's a walk in the park, not a walk through the park. You messed it up," that kind of thing. And then you have to go, "Okay, a walk in the park. I got it. Okay." A Walk in the Park was about a guy who holds up a shoe store. He was a kid that holds up a shoe store with a gun and wants to tell a story to everybody about child abuse. And he buys a pair of running shoes that he thinks are going to make him fly away, like Peter Pan kind of thing. There's an old man there that kind of talks him out of killing anyone or whatever. or hurting anyone. And the police arrive, and he runs out at the end and flies over them. The shoes work because the old man makes them work. The old man's like a secret wizard or something like that, and he puts them on and says, these shoes will work. Or something like that. Bob Reed played the old man. I think the old man just kind of, he just kind of worked with him, talked with him and said, listen, don't do this thing, there it goes. There it goes. Thing, man. Don't do this thing, calm down, don't hurt everybody. It was kind of that kind of thing. I used a rubber band gun because we did the play on the stage behind the curtains. So we brought the curtains down and did the play behind the curtains where all the writers were there on stage, and we all had to write a play. And in the end, the character goes out and he flies over the police, and he flies away from law and away from the harm that's waiting for him, and flies over them. So he becomes kind of like Peter Pan in the end. And the whole idea was to write it to the music of Awakenings. If you ever saw Robert De Niro's Awakenings, I wanted to use the soundtrack, parts of the soundtrack, not the whole soundtrack, but parts of it, so that whenever I presented the play, you could hear Awakenings, the soundtrack to Awakenings going on. And I had this one segment where I used different songs from it, but Rob forgot this CD, so I wasn't able to use, and no copyright problems, so I wasn't able to use it. But Rob used music in the same kind of way. He presented his play, Slow Dancers, to a song that has the word Pell in it. That's all I can remember. It's a Pell something. That's all I remember. It's a song from the Boomer generation called A Pell. And that's all I can remember. P-A-L-A. I'll have to look it up. Scorsese used it. The same song. Martin Scorsese used it in a short film called Life Lessons. And the word is Pell, P-A-L-E. And that word is in that song. That's how I'd be able to find it. Because it's hard to find a song if you don't have one word to identify that song. And the word is Pell, P-A-L-E. And he used that to basically to introduce slow dancers, which Jenna Gerard and I slow danced in front of the whole class, and I was dating Jennifer Quarles. And she had bigger boobs and was probably sexier. She ran off to New York. Jenna Gerard did. Jenna Gerard. She ran off to New York and did something in New York. I don't know. Sex and the City stuff. I have no idea. Meaning I think she did writing, like column writing or journals writing or something like that. But anyway, she was in the play with me, and Rob directed it. It was a really good play. It was ahead of his time. He did very well, and everyone loved it. It was like the star play of all the plays. But there were some cool plays. Like one play, I was in a play Grant Ellis directed and wrote, that where I stepped in a shower, and then when I stepped out of the shower, I was in Paris, France. And that was one of the plays. And then there was another play that Travis McKnight and Rob Vasquez did called Charlie and Bernie. And they talked to God on the phone and eat chips. And it was very, very funny. And Walker one time rolled backwards. He did like a backward monkey roll while everyone was laughing. I remember all these little images. I'm trying to think what Kate Thistlethwaite did. She wrote a play too. I'm pretty sure the one that when I was in France, or Paris, France, I think that was Grant Ellis. Yeah, that was Grant Ellis's play. I remember it was about Paris, France, and stepping in a shower, and then all of a sudden I was in Paris, France, and everyone was speaking French. It's like, what's going on? What did Kate? I don't remember. There was another play where someone wrote letters. I think that was Aaron Goldblatt's play. They wrote letters to each other, and they read the letters on stage to each other, like love letters kind of thing. Then there was a play that Darcy wrote, which was about transgender. It was about a transvestite, and Darcy wrote that one. I think her name was Marcy, not Darcy. Marcy wrote it. She was the one that gave me the Martin guitar. Her name was Marcy, but I think people called her Darcy. But her name was Marcy. And her dad was a doctor, and she gave me a Martin guitar that I kept with me for many years. And I left it in a storage unit in New York City. Trying to think of the other plays. Bob Reed wrote a weird play. It was a play inside of a play. And that's all I remember. It was a play about a play. There was another one called Writer's Block. And Kate Thistle wrote it. I'm sorry, let me go back. Kate Thistle-Waite wrote it. And it was called Writer's Block. It was about a writer that has writer's block and starts standing on the desk and doing all this weird stuff. I later revamped that play and tried to turn it in to the Center Theater, and I called the play, the very beginning part of it, I revamped it, and I called the play The Untitled, and Center Theater did not like it, and they didn't accept it. And it was called The Untitled, and it was about this guy writing these characters that come alive around him, but he has writer's block in the middle. Or I'm sorry, going back. He has writer's block at the beginning of the play. He has writer's block. So he's doing all these different positions, and then like he's sitting on the desk, he's standing on the desk, he's standing on the chair, and he writes about these people that start to come alive, and they're in his apartment. They start walking around and stuff like that. I think it's this one, but I'm probably wrong. But I'm going to go with this one right here. It's like a guessing game. It's probably these guys. They got a lot of tacos.